Picture a private room in one of the grandest hotels in Paris. It is 1925. The champagne on ice is real. The silver is real. The thick cream paper on the table, stamped with the seal of the French government, looks real. And the elegant, silver-tongued gentleman at the head of that table is a fraud, from his polished shoes to the title he has invented for himself. He has gathered 5 of the richest scrap metal dealers in France. He has sworn every one of them to absolute secrecy. And now he leans in, drops his voice to almost a whisper, and tells them that the government has made a painful, confidential decision. The Eiffel Tower, that great rusting iron giant standing over the rooftops, has become too expensive to keep. It is to be quietly torn down and sold off for scrap. 7,000 tons of iron, and one lucky man in this room is going to buy it. And here is the part I need you to sit with. Not one of those hard-headed businessmen laughs. Not one of them stands up and says, "You cannot sell the Eiffel Tower, it belongs to France." No, they reach for their pens. So how, exactly, do you sell a national monument that you do not own to grown men who should know better, take their money and walk away free? And how, in the name of everything, do you then come back a month later and do it a second time? Come here. Sit down. Let me pour you one, because you are going to want to be sitting for this. My name's Eddie, and I have a small confession to make before we start. I am hopelessly, helplessly in love with a beautiful con. Not the nasty kind, not the kind that empties a widow's savings, but the grand, audacious, impossible kind. The kind that takes real nerve and real art. The kind that makes you gasp and then, God help you, grin. I collect them the way other men collect stamps. And somewhere in the back of my mind, if I'm honest, I've always half dreamed of pulling off one of my own someday, the perfect score, clean, elegant, nobody hurt. My mate Sully and I have planned ours 100 times over 100 drinks, and we've never done a single thing about it, and we never will, and that probably is the point. So instead, I do the next best thing. I study the masters, and there was never a master quite like the man in that hotel room. So tonight, my friend, I am going to take you inside the greatest street-level swindle of the 20th century and show you exactly how it was done, move by move, the way a magician shows another magician. Because this is history, not a manual. Nobody here is teaching you to steal. I'm teaching you to see it coming. The gentleman at the head of the table called himself Count Victor Lustig. He was not a count. He was, as far as anyone can tell, born around 1890 in what was then Austria-Hungary, in a corner of the old empire that's part of the Czech lands today. And I have to be honest with you right at the start, because accuracy matters to me even when the truth is less tidy than the legend. An enormous amount of what gets told about this man's early life is smoke. He lied for a living. He collected names and titles and histories the way you or I collect keys, and he threw them away just as easily. By the time the authorities of several countries were seriously trying to work out who he actually was, he was said to carry dozens of aliases and passports to match. So when I tell you the story of his life, understand that some of the edges are blurred, and where the record and the legend disagree, I'll say so. That's the deal between us. What is beyond doubt is that he was one of the most gifted confidence men who ever lived. Charming, fluent in a fistful of languages, elegant, patient, and blessed with the single most valuable tool in the whole trade. He understood people. He understood, better than almost anyone, what a man wants to believe about himself. And he understood that if you can feed a man the story he is already dying to hear, he will do most of the work of fooling himself for you. Before Paris, before the Tower, he had already perfected a smaller masterpiece that tells you everything about how his mind worked. They called it the Romanian box, the money box. Picture a handsome mahogany casket, brass fittings, little rollers and slots and dials, a beautiful, serious-looking machine. Lustig would let a wealthy mark discover, as if by accident, that this box could copy money, not print crude fakes copy. You slid a genuine $100 bill in one slot along with a sheet of blank paper, and the machine, he explained gravely, needed 6 hours of chemical process to duplicate it perfectly. And 6 hours later, would you believe it, out came 2 flawless $100 bills. Both real, both spendable at any bank in the city. Because of course they were real. He had loaded the box in advance with a couple of genuine bills. But once a greedy man has watched real money come out of a wooden box with his own eyes, he stops thinking with his head. Lustig would sigh and say he really shouldn't part with such a thing, and then, reluctantly, let the mark buy the miracle machine for a fortune, sometimes tens of thousands of dollars. And by the time the buyer got home and fed it another bill and waited his 6 hours and got back a nice crisp sheet of blank paper, Lustig was 3 cities away, under another name. And that, right there, is the whole philosophy of the man. So let me hand you the golden rule before we walk into that Paris hotel, because you'll watch him use it on a much grander stage in a moment. Rule 1 of any con, my friend. You never sell a lie. You sell the mark a truth he desperately wants to believe, and you let his own wanting carry him over the cliff. The greedy man wanted the box to be real, so it was real to him. He didn't examine it because examining it might take it away from him. A con man doesn't push. A con man opens a door, describes the beautiful room on the other side, and then, this is the art, pretends he might not let you in, and you'll trample him to get through it. Hold that thought. Everything the Tower swindle does, it does with that one idea. So, Paris, 1925. Lustig is living, as he liked to, in a very good hotel, reading the newspapers over coffee. And reading newspapers, by the way, was his real work. He hunted for opportunities in the news the way a fisherman reads the water. And one morning he reads a small article about the Eiffel Tower, and the little machine behind his eyes starts to turn. You have to understand what the Eiffel Tower was in 1925, because in your mind it is the beloved symbol of Paris, of France, of romance itself. It was not that then. It had been built back in 1889 for the Great World's Fair, and this is true, and it's the hinge the whole con swings on. It was only ever meant to be temporary. A 20-year permit. A clever iron stunt that was supposed to be taken down and sold off once the fair was a memory. Half the artists and worthies of Paris had signed furious letters calling it a monstrous eyesore, a hideous iron skeleton looming over their beautiful city. It had survived past its permit mostly because the army found the top handy for radio aerials. And by the 1920s it was rusting and unfashionable and genuinely expensive to maintain and repaint. The newspapers really were grumbling about the cost of the thing. Now, do you feel it? Do you feel the door opening? Because Lustig felt it. Here was a truth the public half believed already. The Tower is a costly, ugly, temporary embarrassment the government would probably love to be rid of. He didn't have to invent that story. Paris had already written it for him. Rule 1. He only had to step into it, so he became the government. He had counterfeit stationery made up, official ministry letterhead, the correct seals, the correct somber wording. And he installed himself as a senior official of the very ministry that looked after such things. The sort of gray, powerful bureaucrat whose signature moves mountains. And on that forged paper, he sent out discreet, confidential letters to 5 of the biggest scrap metal dealers in Paris, inviting each of them to a private meeting on a matter of great and delicate government business. And here is a small, exquisite detail I adore. He did not summon them to a dingy office. He held court in the Hotel de Crillon, one of the most respectable, most establishment hotels in all of Paris, a place where real ministers really did conduct real affairs of state. The room itself did half his lying for him. You walk into the Crillon to meet a government man. Some part of you has already decided he's genuine before he opens his mouth. That's not luck. That's staging. A con man is a set designer, a costumer, a director, and the mark thinks he wandered into a documentary. So there they are, the 5 dealers in that gilded room, and there he is, grave and important and just a touch weary, a servant of the Republic burdened with a difficult secret. And he tells them. The government, he says, has come to a hard conclusion. The Eiffel Tower is falling apart. The upkeep is ruinous. The repairs are endless. And he lowers his voice. The decision has been made at the highest level to demolish it and sell it discreetly as scrap. 7,000 tons of first-rate wrought iron. But it must be handled with the utmost secrecy. He warns them, because the public, sentimental fools that they are, would be outraged if word got out before the deed was done. That is why there is no public tender, no notice in the papers. Just 5 trusted men, personally selected, invited to submit a confidential bid. And you can see how beautifully every piece locks together. The secrecy isn't a weakness in the story. The secrecy is the story. It explains why this incredible opportunity is being whispered in a hotel room instead of shouted in the press. It flatters the 5 of them, you special few, you trusted insiders. And it does one more thing, the cruelest and cleverest thing. It means that if any of them later feels a flicker of doubt, they can't exactly go around asking questions, can they? Secrecy was the condition of being let in. The con builds its own prison walls and invites the mark to lock the door from the inside. Now 5 bidders. Lustig did not actually care who bid the most. He cared who could be steered and shamed and hurried. So he took them over the following days on a tour, hired a limousine, drove them out to the tower itself, walked them around the ironwork with the proprietary air of a man showing off government property, watched them, listened, weighed them. He was not selling iron. He was shopping for a mark. And he found one. A dealer named Poisson. Poisson was not the biggest fish in that room, and that is precisely why Lustig chose him. Because Poisson was the insecure one, a man on the outside of Paris's great business circles, aching to be on the inside, aching to be someone, convinced that the other established dealers look down on him. And a man who desperately wants to belong is the softest target in the world because you are no longer selling him iron. You are selling him a rival. You are selling him the day he finally becomes a somebody. Buy the Eiffel Tower, pull off the deal of the century, hand-picked by the government, and who could ever look down on Poisson again? Rule 1, remember. Don't sell the lie. Sell the truth he's dying to believe about himself. Lustig read Poisson's deepest wish off his face and simply held it out to him. But now comes the single most brilliant move in the whole affair, and it is so counterintuitive, so upside down, that when you understand it, you'll never quite look at a smooth-talking stranger the same way again. Because Poisson, or more likely Poisson's sharp-eyed wife, did start to feel a flicker of doubt. Something was a touch too fast, too good, too smooth. And a lesser con man would have panicked and piled on more reassurance, more grandeur, more polish, which only ever makes a doubter more suspicious. Lustig did the opposite. Lustig made himself smaller and dirtier and therefore real. He arranged a private meeting with Poisson, and there he confided, man to man, with a show of shame, that he was only a poorly paid government official, that a deal of this size crossed his desk and made other men rich, while he got by on a civil servant's miserable salary, and that, if Monsieur Poisson wanted his bid to be the one that was chosen, well, perhaps a little something extra quietly for the official personally on top of the purchase price would help matters along. He asked for a bribe, and do you see the diabolical genius of it? The instant Lustig asked for a bribe, every last doubt in Poisson's mind evaporated, because a crooked, greedy, grubby little bureaucrat with his hand out is the most believable government official in the entire world. An honest man selling you the Eiffel Tower is suspicious. A corrupt man selling you the Eiffel Tower is just Tuesday. The bribe wasn't Lustig getting greedy. The bribe was the proof. It transformed a too-good-to-be-true fairy tale into a grubby, familiar, thoroughly convincing piece of real-world corruption. The kind Poisson had always assumed was how big business really got done behind closed doors. Lustig sold his own dishonesty as a certificate of authenticity. I have turned that move over in my head for years, and I still can't decide whether to applaud or shudder. Both, probably. So Poisson paid. He paid for the tower, and he paid the bribe on top. The figure that comes down to us is somewhere around 70,000 francs, all told, though like every number in a story like this it should be held a little loosely. In return, he received a beautiful, official, utterly worthless bill of sale, stamped and sealed, granting him 7,000 tons of iron he would never own. And Victor Lustig, that same day, took the money, walked out of the Crillon, boarded a train, and vanished off to Austria to Vienna, to lie low and count his francs and read the newspapers he was so sure would soon be screaming his name. And this is where the story stops being merely a great con and becomes something close to a work of art. Because Lustig sat in Vienna and waited for the scandal, and it never came. There was nothing in the papers. No outrage, no manhunt, silence. Why? Because of the very insecurity he had chosen Poisson for in the first place. When poor André Poisson finally worked out that he'd been fleeced, when it dawned on him that there was no sale, no demolition, no official, nothing, he faced a choice. He could go to the police and get his money back and see the swindler caught, or he could keep his mouth shut. And he kept his mouth shut, because going to the police meant the whole of Paris would learn that André Poisson, who so wanted to be respected as a great man of business, had been fool enough to buy the Eiffel Tower from a stranger in a hotel. He was more afraid of the laughter than he was in love with his own money. His shame was Lustig's getaway car. The con man had built the escape into the Mark's own soul before he ever took a franc. And so Lustig, sitting in Vienna reading nothing, realizes something wonderful and terrible. He got away with it so clean that the victim is helping him hide it, which means the crime is still, in a sense, undiscovered. Which means, and here I want you to imagine the slow grin spreading across this man's face, the Eiffel Tower is, technically, still for sale. So he went back. He returned to Paris, cool as you like, gathered a fresh set of scrap dealers, took out the forged letterhead again, and set up the identical con from the top to sell the very same tower to a whole new circle of trusting fools. He ran the same play a second time, and he very nearly pulled it off again. This time, though, his chosen mark got suspicious enough, soon enough, to go to the police before the money was safely gone, and Lustig, sensing the air change the way only a lifelong con man can, slipped out of Paris ahead of the law and disappeared. He was never punished for the Eiffel Tower. Not for selling it once, not for selling it twice. He simply moved on to his next act, richer and grinning and free. Now, I would love to tell you that a man that talented lived out his days on a warm terrace somewhere, sipping something expensive, but the trade doesn't tend to end that way, and honesty compels me. Lustig eventually made his way to America, the con man's promised land, and there, in time, he overreached. He got into the counterfeiting business, not the little theater of a magic money box, but the real industrial thing, running a large operation printing fake banknotes, enough of them and good enough to genuinely rattle the United States Treasury. And there is a lovely, much-repeated tale that in his American years, he even swindled Al Capone, borrowed money from the great gangster, gave it all back untouched, and got paid for his honesty. And I'd be a poor, honest storyteller if I didn't tell you that this one is very thinly documented, a favorite of the legend that I wouldn't bet your drink on. What is solid is the fall. In 1935, he was arrested in New York on the counterfeiting charges. And then, because he simply could not help himself, the night before his trial he escaped, knotted together a rope of bedsheets, climbed out a window of the federal jail in the middle of Manhattan, and was loose in the city for the better part of a month before they caught him again. This time there was no charming his way out. 20 years, and they sent him to the one address in America designed for men who escape, Alcatraz, the Rock. He became just another number on that cold island in the bay. And there, in 1947, the man who sold the Eiffel Tower twice, who charmed fortunes out of the greediest men of 2 continents, died in custody of pneumonia in a prison hospital with nothing. The most beautiful liar of his age, and the truth caught up with him in the end, the way it generally does. So, that's the story. Isn't it magnificent? And here's where I'm supposed to send you off grinning at a clever dead crook in a hotel 100 years ago. But I'm not going to, and I need you to lean in for this last part, because it's the part that actually matters, the reason I really wanted to tell you this one tonight. Because Victor Lustig is not dead. Not really. The man is gone, but the machine he ran, the exact psychology of it, is running against you and the people you love right now, today, probably this week. Look again at how the Tower Con actually worked, and strip away the top hats and the champagne. A voice of authority you don't think to question. A crisis that demands you act right now, quickly, quietly. A secret you're specially chosen to be part of that you mustn't discuss with anyone else. And a small favor, a payment, a code, a transfer that makes you feel like an insider even as it makes you the victim. That is a phishing email. That is the phone call that says it's your bank and there's fraud on your account and you must move your money right now, and whatever you do, don't tell the teller why. That is the text with the link, the fake official, the urgent secret transfer. It is the Romanian money box in your inbox, promising you something for nothing. It is Lustig at the Crillon, wearing a badge you can't see. I'm not being dramatic. My own nephew, a smart kid, sharper than me at his age, got a message a while back, dressed up as his bank, all urgency and authority, telling him his account was compromised and he had to confirm a payment immediately to secure it. Act now. Don't wait. Keep it quiet. He had his thumb over the button, and the only thing that stopped him was that he'd sat through one too many of my stories about old dead con men, and a little bell went off, and he heard it. The urgency, the authority, the secret, the favor. Lustig's fingerprints, 100 years on. He put the phone down and called the real bank, and there was, of course, no problem at all, until he'd very nearly created one. So this is the real reason I collect these stories, and it's the one thing I genuinely ask you to carry out of here tonight. The perfect con doesn't feel like a con. It feels like an opportunity, or an emergency, and it always comes wearing authority and pointing at a clock. The single most protective sentence in the human language is boring and unglamorous, and I want you to tattoo it somewhere in your mind. Nobody who is genuine will ever punish you for slowing down to check. Anyone who needs you to decide right now in secret without asking a soul, that person is selling you the Eiffel Tower. Hang up. Slow down. Ask the stupid question. Make the second phone call. And now I really want to hear from you down in the comments because I read them and I love them. Tell me, have you ever felt the pull of one of these? The too good deal, the urgent official, the message that made your stomach drop and your thumb hover. Did you catch it, or did it catch you? Tell me your near miss. Tell me about the one that got away. Mine's a beauty, a mark too sharp to fall for anything. I'll tell you about her someday. And if you had a good time tonight, if you like the idea of pulling up a chair while I take apart history's greatest swindles from the inside, the forgers, the imposters, the schemes too mad to be true, then stick around, subscribe, and come back next time, because I've got a whole cabinet of them and I do so love the company. Look after yourself out there. Keep your wits about you. Keep your hand on your wallet. And remember old Victor at the Crillon. The next time a stranger offers you the deal of a lifetime. Because that, my friend, is exactly how you lose your shirt.